What's up, my friend David Moss Jr. here, and in this video we are going to take a deep dive look at the Plunge. Now this is one of the most iconic cold plunges on the market. We are going to fully review it and talk about everything there is to it to help you determine if it's a cold plunge you should consider for yourself or not. All right, let's jump right in. Well, here's the first thing we should talk about. It wasn't that long ago when Plunge only offered a very small lineup of options. You had the Plunge or you had the Plunge XL, and the only difference was going to be the size of the tub. Well, now they've ended that, and now they only have one tub option, and that is the XL size, which the cool thing is it brings it in for everybody. You've got double slanted walls, and it's roomy enough in there to fit people up to 6'8" tall, which is great. But now they've given us options. We actually have two chiller options to choose from, and we're going to talk about the differences between both to help make your decision a little bit easier. And we're also going to take a deep dive into the tub itself, talk about the specifications and the features that it has with both chillers to make your decision just a little bit easier. So if you were to visit the Plunge website as of shooting this video, and I'll pop a link up on the screen, it's just dmjr.co/plunge. That'll take you right to the website. You can take a look at all the different options there. But if you were to look at the iconic Plunge, which is exactly what this tub is, it's iconic. A lot of people who have been around the cold plunging scene for the past few years, when you think of cold plunging, you either think of ice in a tub or you really think about this tub itself. So it is in fact iconic, but you'll notice the starting price is $59.90. Now that's gonna come with the standard chiller without the heating option. And once again, after we talk about the tub, we'll get into the details of the chiller. But this is the chiller that you would get if you were to buy the tub at the cheapest price. And the chiller is great. We do have a lot of really cool stuff we're gonna get to talk about. But to answer the first question on everybody's mind, what is the price? The price for the whole package getting you cold is $59.90 to start. Now, if you do use discount code MOSS, that's MAUS, it'll save you some money as well. So feel free to use that if you do decide to make a purchase. But as far as the tub goes, you've got the double slanted feature, and the cool thing is you can actually sit on either side. Now there is going to be a light in this tub, which is amazing. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with the standard chiller. You do have to upgrade to the Pro chiller to access that light. But the light is going to be on one side of the tub, and it doesn't really protrude out, so you can sit on either side of the tub. A matter of fact, me and my wife sometimes get into the tub and cold plunge together because it is like a very comfortable, luxurious tub, and that's what makes it really nice. They do have enhanced insulation. If I was to flip this thing over, you would notice the entire inside has been insulated, which is amazing, and it helps retain the temperature no matter what the ambient temperature outside is. It also comes with a nice insulated lid to help keep the elements out. It is latchable to keep the children out, and it is insulated, so it helps keep the water at the exact set temperature that you want it to be at. The setup is extremely easy, and we'll talk about that here in a second as well. And like I said, the inside of this tub is rated for people up to 6'8". Now the next thing I want to do is measure this thing, because sometimes the measurements online and visually the measurements in real life can be a little bit different. I want to make sure you have the exact measurements so you know exactly how much room you need to have this tub. All right, now let's go ahead and measure this thing, and I'm going to do two sets of measurements. I'm going to do the outside exterior measurements so you know how much space that you need, but then we're also going to talk about the measurements inside so you can kind of determine how much room you're going to have inside this tub. So let's start with the outside measurements. From end to end, you're looking at just under 73 inches total length. Now remember, that's just for the tub. Depending on which chiller you go with, you are going to need extra room, and that extra room is going to have to come off of this side of the tub, and we'll talk about that here in a second. As far as the overall width goes, you're looking at 32, just over 32.5 inches wide at the widest point. Now this tub does taper down on both ends and in the middle, so the base is actually gonna be a little bit smaller than that. So you should be able to fit this through standard doorway. You just might have to tilt it up on its side. And speaking of that, let's talk about the overall height, which from the floor to the top, 27 inches. So once again, you'll just have to flip it over on its side, and this should easily fit through any standard door. The cool thing is you can put this inside or outside. Because of all the insulation underneath and inside, you should not ever experience any condensation from the tub itself. Now, depending on which chiller you get and if you go with the heat or not is going to determine if the chiller can be used inside or out. And once again, we'll talk about that later in the video. Now let's talk about the interior measurements. At the widest point, important for people with large shoulders, you have 29 inches wide. The bottom, at the most narrow, where your butt's gonna be, 19, because it is slanted, so it's kind of hard to get the exact measurement. But 19 inches wide at the narrowest point at the bottom. As far as the top goes, 69 inches. And from the bottom, you're gonna have right around 44 inches as far as the length goes. And then from the base to the top, where you're gonna fill the water up, you're right under 21 inches from the base to the top. Now remember, here's a tip. If this is gonna be the first cold plunge that you buy, when it comes time to fill this up and set this up, you're not gonna wanna fill the water all the way up to the top, because when you get in the water, that water will displace, which means it's gonna rise, and it will overflow all over your floor. So depending on where you have it, You're not gonna want that to happen. Now let's talk about the inside of the tub and the actual floor plan inside the tub. So like I was mentioning earlier, you are gonna have a light that'll be right here on this side. Now this is going to be the side that the chiller will be on. So if you're using a plunge chiller, it will always be off this side, and I'll explain why in a little bit. The cool thing about Plunge is they've developed a cold plunge that creates a lot of circulation, meaning the water's constantly moving. That'll keep the water cleaner. That helps cycle the water through the chiller, helps keep the water nice and clean and nice and cold. And what's cool about that is you actually have 2 points of entry, one here on the back and one here down by where your feet would go, and that's where the water gets sucked in. Cool thing about this is actually a pre-filter that you can unscrew and clean out if need be. Now you want to keep this on at all times. This is going to prevent hair, grass, debris, rocks, toys, anything from making its way through the pipes going into the chiller and potentially damaging the chiller. This is what I would consider and call a pre-filter. One at the bottom and one at the back. Most people are going to lay back with their back on this side of the cold plunge and their feet on this side if they have the Pro Chiller and they're using the light. Reason is, if you were to lay back on this side, you would block the light. But once again, like I mentioned earlier, you can lay both ways and there's not going to be a problem. Now, like you have 2 spots where the water can go in and go into the chiller and the filter, you have 2 jets where the water is going to come out, and these are directional. You can change where they flow, but I like to keep the water going straight across the cold plunge. It creates a nice circle, a nice little cycle, and that's going to keep your water circulating, and that helps keep the water cleaner a lot longer. So it is nice that it creates a great circulation and great flow of water. Another thing I didn't mention earlier is this is a reinforced acrylic. So this is like your premium tub that you would purchase for your home. So it is extremely durable and very easy to keep clean. You may be wondering what this little QR code is here that's right on the front of the tub that could be considered a little bit of an eyesore. Well, the cool thing is it's a sticker. You can easily take it off, but this is going to be your entry into the Plunge app. Now, if you're watching this video and you don't have a Plunge, the cool thing is the Plunge app is absolutely free, and it is a really cool resource for people in the cold plunge community to time their cold plunge, to track their cold plunges, to share their cold plunges with friends. It's a really community-based app, and it's really fun to use. But it gets really fun if you have a Plunge product, because if you do have the app and you do have a Plunge product, whether it be their cold plunge with the standard chiller or the Pro Chiller or their sauna, all of those products can actually be controlled by the app. So you can change the temperature, you can get smart notifications on when it's time to change your filter or if your flow rate is going down. You can turn it on, you can turn it off and pause it. You can turn lights on and off. Every feature and function that you can do from the chiller, you can pretty much do all of the same stuff right from the app from wherever you are, which is a really cool feature. And no matter what plunge product you get, if you get a sauna, cold plunge, or a chiller, all of the products are gonna have a QR code that's gonna take you right to the app. So it is really easy to get to, and it is really accessible. They also have really good instructional guides on showing you exactly how to set up your cold plunge, no matter which one you go with. On both sides of the plunge, you're gonna have these nice little clips, and this is where your lid is actually going to clip into, and it is a child safety measure. It keeps the wind from blowing the lid off, which is nice, but it also keeps the kids from being able to get into your cold plunge if you don't want them to. And it's nice that it's already attached to your plunge. You don't have to do it yourself. Now we take a tour over here on the backside, and what's cool is the entire backside is beautiful of this plunge. The cool thing about how they brought everything in and they put all the connection ports right here in one little spot is you can have this thing out in the open on your back porch or wherever you want it, and it's gonna look very beautiful. You're not gonna have a bunch of random filters and a bunch of stuff sticking out of the back of your cold plunge that you're gonna try to hide. It's absolutely beautiful and stunning. And over here on this side is where everything is gonna connect. You're gonna be able to connect this to any of the plunge chillers. I'll show you the connections in a second here, but I just wanna show you, you do have 2 connections here for the water to go in and the water to go out. This is where you'll drain the plunge. You actually just take this little cap off. You can attach a hose to this. This is fitted for a hose. So you can attach to a hose, run that hose wherever you want, and then open it up, let the water all drain out and flow out, shut it back, never lose your cap, keep your cap on there. And that's gonna keep your water obviously from draining when you don't want it to. But it's nice that you can attach a hose and run this thing wherever you want it, so you can let all the water drain there. And then this little wire, because I do have the Pro Chiller, this is the little wire that you're gonna connect to your Pro Chiller to control your light. Setup on this thing shouldn't take any longer than 20 minutes other than filling the tub up with water. It's a very simple setup. You will need 2 people so that you can place the tub where you want it, because it's not very heavy, but it is just a large tub. You're gonna make sure you don't drag it across the floor, so always recruit a friend when it comes time to move the tub. Setup is extremely easy. You literally just connect 1, 2 connections to whichever chiller you choose. If you have the Pro Chiller, you just grab this little cord and you're gonna plug it right into the Pro Chiller to connect and control your light. and then you fill it up with water, you plug it in, and you turn it on. And then you're getting cold. So simple. So there was a lot of information on the tub itself, and I think it's important to understand what you're getting into when it comes to an actual tub, the connections, how it looks, and the size. But now let's talk about the chillers, because you do have two really good chillers to choose from when it comes to the Plunge products, and primarily most people are gonna end up getting the standard chiller, so we're gonna start with that. So this is the standard chiller, and when you get the standard chiller, if you were to get the standard chiller with the Plunge tub, you're gonna start at $59.90, and that's gonna get you cold. The standard chiller is a half horsepower chiller, and it's capable of reaching temperatures down to 39 degrees. It is compatible with the Plunge app, and you can control this entire chiller from the app, which is awesome. This chiller is rated for indoors and outdoor use, and the outside of this chiller is made with a powder coated sheet metal. As far as the filtration goes, you do get a 20 micron filter, which is going to help keep all the debris out of your cold plunge. And when it comes time to change that filter, it should take you anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes to do a full change. And regardless which chiller you decide to go with, both chillers are extremely easy to initially set up and keep running. Now, really the only upgrade you can get if you were to get the standard chiller is getting the heat option. Now, I will warn you that the heat option does not mean you're going to use this as a hot tub. The heat option is primarily only used if you live in really, really cold climates and you want to keep this thing running 12 months out of the year. The heat function is just to keep the water from freezing inside the chiller. Now, if you do live somewhere that's notorious for having power outages in the freezing months, I would still encourage you to take your chiller off and store it away for those months if that is something you're worried about. Because just like anything with water, if the water does freeze inside the pipes, there is a really good chance it's going to burst your pipes and ruin your chiller, and we definitely don't want that. A couple things I like about this chiller is you do have handles on both sides. It's not that heavy. All of these all-in-one chillers are typically somewhere between 50 and 90 pounds. So you're gonna have a pretty heavy box, and you're not gonna want to drop this thing. These things are pretty delicate. So make sure that whenever you do decide to find the spot to put this thing down, you put it down nice and gracefully. It does have rubber bumpers on the bottom, so it's not gonna slide around. There's no wheels, which I'm a big fan of not having wheels. I don't think there's really a need to have wheels on your chiller, but that's just my preference. It does have handles on the outside, which obviously makes it really easy to pick up and set down whenever you need to move it. The functions are extremely easy. Now, I don't have it plugged in yet, but when you are ready to change this thing and use this thing, you're gonna have a sticker on the front of this that's gonna walk you through pretty much the basic functions, and it's very, very simple. You're gonna have a power button, you're gonna have a cool or hot button right here that's gonna let you know if you do have your cooling on, your heating on. Obviously there is an auto mode too, where it'll figure it out based off the set temperature. You have a lock feature to keep this thing from changing or to keep anybody from messing with it. And then you have an arrow that goes up and an arrow that goes down. That's gonna set your temperature obviously up or down. Basic functions, extremely easy, very user-friendly. And once again, if you set this thing up on your app, you can do all of that from your app, which might be the best thing to do. Now, currently, at time of shooting this video, the app is only on iOS. And like I mentioned, if you do decide to go with the heat feature on this chiller, that does bring the price of the entire package up to $64.90. So it's about a $500 addition if you do decide to go with heat. Now, with this chiller, if you do get the heat feature, you cannot have this inside. I'm not sure why, but you don't want to have this chiller inside if you have the heat feature. I think it's like an exhaust thing. I don't really know, but I read that online and I want to make sure you know too. This chiller can also just plug right into your standard 110 volt outlet. It's a little bit on the louder side. It's quieter than most chillers, but when I compared this to the Pro chiller you can almost barely hear when it's on. And this chiller obviously sounded like a chiller. There's a fan moving and a pump moving, so you could kind of hear it. So if you do plan on having this inside, I wouldn't have it on, you know, right next to my bed, because you might hear it. Doesn't mean I wouldn't get it, just saying it's a chiller. But it's crazy when you experiment with like the Pro chiller and it's extremely quiet. You can't tell the difference until you have one that's really quiet. That's all I'm gonna say. Now, when it comes time to change the filter, this is gonna be the filter that this chiller has. The size is gonna be a 2.5 by 10 inch, 20 micron filter. Changing it's pretty simple. There's a tool on the side here that magnets to the side of the inside of the filter canister, and you just take your canister out, you unscrew it, you put the new one in, you throw the old one away, you put it back in, you screw it on, you use the tool to make sure it's tight so you don't have any leaks, turn it back on, it does its thing, keeps your water nice and clean. So that is the filter. A lot of people ask me that question on Instagram. They're like, hey, what size filter do I need? Because most of the chillers do use a similar filter size. This is what you need. 10 inch by 2.5 inch for most chillers. So that was the standard chiller. Now let's talk about the Pro chiller. Now this is a major upgrade. The Pro chiller is a really cool chiller. Basically, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the other videos I have on my channel. I've been doing reviews and working with Plunge for a little over a year now. I've actually been to their factory. I was one of the first creators to actually come to their factory and get a full behind the scenes tour. Really cool video if you haven't seen it yet. Like, it's a super impressive operation. And the founders of Plunge are really, really good people doing a really, really good thing, coming out with some pretty awesome products. So I appreciate the partnership with them and being able to come in and see the sauna before they even really launched the sauna. I got to see their sauna village and how they build the sauna. Super awesome operation. But all that to say that this was a design that came from what they decided to design, which is the cream of the crop, their Plunge All-In. And I do have some videos on the Plunge All-In. Basically, it's this, except it's not slanted on this side, it's flat, and this chiller is built inside the Plunge. It is a super impressive and extremely efficient cold plunge. And during the testing and when I went to the factory, I got to see how they actually tested it all. They had it in an ambient box of like 130 degrees where they just had heat, just pushing heat in this thing. And it was just keeping the water at 37 degrees without skipping a beat, which was really cool to see. So then they decided, hey, we already have the components. Let's like rebox it up and sell it as an option to add it into all the other cold plunges that we're going to be coming out with, which they've got a lot of options now, which is really cool. But it's nice that they did that. Like, this is a very unique chiller, I could say. My geese are probably going to be honking in the background of this video. Hey, come on, girls, go back to the lake. Anyway, let's talk about the upgrade to the Pro Chiller. So if you do decide to go with the Pro Chiller, you do get the light. That is a major upgrade. If you do have the light, you obviously want to use the light, and you can only use the light currently with the Pro Chiller. Now, it does come with a pretty good upcharge. The Pro Chiller with the Plunge is going to be $74.90, and if you do decide to go with the heat feature, it goes up to $8,090. And they're coming back. Sorry, the geese are gonna just be a part of my videos forever now. They're my babies. I've had them since they were just little tiny geese. Anyway, so here's some things about the Pro Chiller you're gonna wanna know. It is a pretty good upgrade. It is a 1 horsepower chiller. It does have whisper quiet technology. This thing is so quiet. Matter of fact, when I walk over here, I have to like look at it and double take to make sure that it's on. And it is. It's just super quiet. I actually have 2 running right now that you can't hear. And I've reviewed a ton of different chillers and a ton of different cold plunges, and this is probably the quietest chiller that I've ever experienced. This chiller can also reach temperatures of 37 degrees and ambient temperatures of up to 120 plus degrees. So if you live in Arizona, or if you live somewhere where it just gets really, really hot, this is a really good chiller for you. It's gonna keep your cold plunge at exactly what temperature you want it to be all the time. It's also extremely beautiful. It's made out of acrylic, so it has that same beautiful signature look. It just looks uniformed. When you look at it next to the Plunge tub, it just looks like it's meant to be there. It's absolutely stunning. Changing the filter on this also takes less than 1 minute. The filter cartridge is on top. There is a pause feature. I'll show you the setup and we'll actually go through it. But there's a pause feature. You pause it, stops the water flow without having to unplug anything or shut anything off. And then you just pop the top canister, you open it up, you take the filter out, which it also uses a larger filter, pop that filter out, put a new filter in, screw it back on, unpause it, and away you go. Like, takes 30 seconds to change the filter on this thing, which is awesome. Helps keep the water really, really clean, super efficient chiller. And I know it's a little bit on the pricier side, but it's one of the chillers that I can say it's probably gonna be worth it. As far as the function goes on the Pro Chiller, it's also extremely easy, app compatible, very easy. You can use it all from the app, or you can use it all from right here. You are gonna have the same arrows. You have a down arrow and an up arrow, obviously to adjust the temperature. You do have a push button here for your lights. The pause button is to pause operation. You do have multiple options. You can pause it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and then it recycles back to on. So if you ever do pause it, you can immediately get it to turn right back on by just cycling all the way to the on feature. The reason you would want to pause it for 15, 30, whatever, some people really like to snorkel. They like to get underwater and actually you have a snorkel above the water and stay completely 100% submerged. That is next level. I'm not that psycho, but there's a lot of people who are, and I love and respect that. So if you're one of those people who wants to literally cold plunge for 15, 20, 30 minutes underwater with a snorkel, just breathing through a snorkel, I hear it's incredible. It's an incredible experience. It's just not necessarily something I do on a regular basis, but that's a reason you would want to use that pause feature for that long. Also, when you're changing the filter, it's a cool feature. You can literally just pause it. You don't have to unplug anything. You don't have to shut any water out, none of that stuff, and it makes changing the filter out extremely easy. There's 2 handles on both sides. The thing's made out of acrylic. It is absolutely beautiful. The front side is flat and the back side is slanted, so it fits right into the slant of the tub. And you'll notice a lot of the Plunge products do have a slanted side and a flat side. That's kind of like one of their signature looks since creating the Plunge all in. And it's really nice. Like even their sauna is flat on one side, slanted on one side. It's kind of like their thing, which is cool. You have handles on both sides, making it very easy to move around. Rubber stops on the bottom, no wheels. Once it's there, it's nicely in place. You do have a fan on the front, and then you have a vent on the back as well. So, and that's something pretty common on all chillers, because obviously you want to pool air in, keeping the coils nice and cool. And then on the side over here is where you're gonna connect your connections to your tub of choice, and obviously where you're gonna connect your light, because this is the chiller you're gonna want if you do decide you want to use the light. And here's a funny story I probably shouldn't be sharing, but I think people need to know that if you ever purchased a chiller, if you ever read a review and it's like, my chiller didn't work, 90%-ish of the time is because of shipping. I think what happened, and this is just my hypothesis here, is most of these cold plunge companies, Plunge specifically, only sold one option, and it was a big option that had to be delivered freight. And when you deliver freight, you typically have 2 people with a truck, with, you know, a forklift and all this stuff, and they're setting things down real nicely, delicately, white glove service, and it's very difficult for something to get damaged when you're shipping like that. Well, then they transitioned and they started just selling chillers, and that's a whole different shipping and delivery process. And a delivery guy picking up I mean, you gotta think about it. Usually it's one guy, has a dolly but isn't really using it. He's like, I can handle this. So he picks up a 90-pound box, and they can end up getting manhandled a little bit. And these things aren't meant to be thrown around, or aren't meant to be put on their side or set down hard on their side. And I actually got my chiller, my first one, shipped. It was hilarious, but also not. It had bubbles on it. It said this side up only, extremely fragile, had the bubble marker. It was on its side, and obviously it didn't work. So it's kind of hard to blame Plunge for that when obviously it was a shipping issue, and I experienced that. I know a lot of people probably experience similar things with other deliveries in their lifetime, where you order something pretty fragile and it's broken, which stinks. But at the end of the day, what I love about Plunge and why it's very easy for me to recommend this product is that they did right by every single person who had a damaged chiller, and they shipped them a brand new one, and it's been really cool. And if you ever have an issue with any of your cold plunge situations, please reach out to me. I love being an advocate on your behalf. I have a direct line with many of the founders of many of these companies, and if you have an issue, share it with me so that I can share it with them, because most of the companies that I represent, most of the companies that I review, most of the companies that I get to talk about, I don't just do it because they have a good product. I like to know the founders too. And I like to tell the founders, hey, I am an advocate for the cold plunge community. I'll share your product if it's a good product, but I also wanna make sure you have their back as well. It's not so much about me, but it is about you. So I wanna make sure that you have a great ownership experience of any cold plunge that it is that you buy. Okay, so let's recap. We talked about the tub with the standard chiller, and then we talked about the optional heating with the standard chiller. We also talked about upgrading to the Pro chiller, and then obviously the heating feature with the Pro chiller, which if you do decide to go with the heating feature on the Pro chiller, you can have this indoors. Once again, I'm not exactly sure why that is the difference, but it is listed on their website as something you should be cautious for. So if you are planning on keeping this indoors and you want the heat feature, you're gonna wanna go with the Pro chiller. And then disclaimer, neither chiller you're gonna wanna use as a hot tub. The heating feature is just to keep your water from freezing over in the cold months. So just wanna throw that out there. I think it's super important for everybody to know. That's my opinion. That may not be what all the companies talk about, but that has definitely been my experiences. You wanna make sure you're not using this as a hot tub. But let's talk about the differences. Okay, so you're at this point in the video. You're like, okay, David, I like it. You're liking it. What should we do now? Now we got to decide which chiller it is that we want. Now the setup on both, extremely easy. It's not going to take any less time if you go with the Pro chiller to set it up, but it doesn't take a long time. Setting this up is extremely easy. You should be able to set this thing up and start filling up with water in less than 20 minutes. Obviously, depending on how fast your water flows, that's going to determine on how fast you can start getting cold. But the Pro chiller chills the water so fast. I don't have an exact time, and obviously where you live and the ambient temperature of where you're gonna have this thing and the water temperature of your hose water, those are all determining factors of how long. But most of the time when I fill this thing up, I turn it on and I wanna get cold, I'm getting cold in 3 hours. And I'm in Florida, it's usually really hot. Right now today it's 84 degrees, so it's a pretty hot day. My hose temperature is around that temperature, and I'll be able to get cold within 3 hours, most of the time. Don't hold me to that. When it comes to the standard chiller, it chills a little slower, but it is because it's a half horsepower chiller as opposed to a full horsepower chiller. That is why there's gonna be a little price difference when it comes to the standard versus the Pro. If you want the premium, go with the Pro. If you want the light, go with the Pro. If you plan on having this indoors and you want the heat, go with the Pro. If you're just getting into cold plunging and you wanna buy something from a company that is reputable, they stand behind their product, they have a good warranty, and they care about the community, then get the standard chiller and go from there. One of the things I can say is I've never been disappointed with a Plunge product. I've had some issues here and there, but they're always there to help. They have a really good customer support team, and that's one of the many reasons why I like working with them. Both chillers are gonna get your water cold. The difference is 39 degrees, 37 degrees. If those 2 degrees make a big difference for you, obviously go with the Pro. Both of them are gonna keep your water nice and clean. However, you can see there is a difference in filter size. The filter inside the Pro is a 7.7 inch by 4.5 inch, so it is a much wider, thicker chiller, which means it's going to catch a little bit more debris and keep your water a little bit cleaner. But at the end of the day, you really need to change these things out every month anyway, so it doesn't really matter which one you go with. Both chillers are gonna keep your water clean. Both chillers are gonna pump enough water to keep circulation happening inside your Plunge, which is gonna keep your water clean as well. So it's really your choice on which chiller you decide to go with if you do decide to go with the Plunge. And if you do decide to purchase the Plunge, there's a lot of different places you can shop, but I would love it if you just use the link down in the description below and discount code MOSS. That lets Plunge know that my reviews don't suck, but don't do it for me. Only do it if it makes sense for you. The cool thing about my channel is I'm not exclusive to any cold plunge company. I love reviewing all the best ones and giving you all the information you need to make the best decision for yourself. Now we talked about the differences. Let's go ahead and set up my personal favorite, and that's gonna be the Pro. All right, now let's set up the Pro chiller. Setup is gonna be almost identical on both. It's just I'd rather set up the Pro chiller because I have it and it's, you know, a little bit better. So this is about how you're gonna want it. You're gonna wanna have it slanted side next to the tub, which is cool. So the tub and chillers are not all universal. All the connections are gonna be literally cut to size. So if you were to get the standard chiller and this Plunge tub, the connections are gonna be completely different, and they do matter, okay? So you are gonna wanna see, there's instructions on the website, but you can kind of follow along and see like where things will fit. So what I like to do is I like to just kind of set my light line underneath the power line, and then the harder one to connect is always this one because it's kind of like off to the side. So I like to screw it in, not all the way, enough where I can twist this thing, and then move the chiller exactly where it needs to be so it fits, and do the same thing. I'll tighten it, but not all the way. I was trying to do it with one hand as I was getting a little cocky there, right? And then same thing, push this other one down a little bit, push this one in, screw it. This is your shut off. You don't necessarily need to worry about it too much on the Pro because you have the pause feature, but having the shut off is nice because it allows you to completely shut off the water flow if you ever need to or want to. So you can do it that way, you can do it however you want to, but make sure that you're screwed nice and tight so you don't have any leaks. Another nice touch is that they do insulate the tubes, which is awesome if you have this inside or once again in a gym on a floor that you don't want to get wet. There we go. Everything's nice and tight. It's also super important to note by this time, before you put water in it, you're gonna wanna have it exactly where you want it. Now I'm gonna put it here for right now for this video. I will probably drain this thing and move it a bunch of times. It's kind of what I do, but I'm gonna have it here for now, but you're gonna wanna have it exactly where you want it before you put water into it. You're actually gonna want it exactly where you want it before you even completely screw your chiller into this thing, because once it's all connected, you don't wanna just start wiggling it all around and take the risk or run the risk of actually accidentally breaking something. So just remember, have it where you want it before you connect your chiller and before you fill it up with water. And this is what the insulated lid looks like when it's fully on. And like I mentioned earlier, you do have these clips over here so it won't come up unless you unclip it, and you can fold it in half, which most people are gonna do it like this. They're gonna fold it in half when they want a cold plunge, so they don't have to like take the lid fully off, especially if you're just doing a 2, 3, 4 minute cold plunge. You just need to take half of it off, jump in there, get your cold plunge done, then fold it nice back over there, clip it back in, and you're good to go. But the lid is awesome, insulated, it is slanted down, so when it does rain, water can like bead right off this thing, but it's fully weatherproof. You can have this thing in all weather. All right, now I think it's ready to fill up. So here's a big tip that you're gonna wanna make sure to pay attention to. If you've never filled up a cold plunge before, please listen to this. This right here is a hose filter. You're more than likely gonna be filling your cold plunge up with a hose. Don't use your hose water unless you live somewhere where your hose water is natural spring water and it's amazing. I live in Florida, my hose water is brown. It's not great, I live on a well, so I'm not in city water, so I definitely need one of these. And even with this, my hose water is still a little brown. So this is a hose filter. Here's a key. You're gonna wanna make sure that when you first turn this thing on, you don't put it in your tub, because these use carbon, and the carbon will come out in the first like 5 seconds, and it's gonna be black water. You don't want that to go into your cold plunge. So make sure that you angle this thing off into the grass or wherever, turn it on for 5 seconds before you actually put it into your cold plunge. I've used this filter a few times, so I don't have any risk of that, but I am gonna run it for a couple seconds anyway. All right, so make sure the water coming out is nice and clear. Drop it in there. Now we just wait. So when you're filling it up, I mentioned earlier the hack of leaving about 6 to 8 inches of water from the top, getting into it and seeing exactly how much water gets displaced so that you know where your fill line needs to be. That's a cool hack. Another hack is once the water is above where the water actually goes into the chiller, so both of your pre-filters are underwater. Obviously the bottom one will be, but as long as your back one is and your jets are underwater, you can actually go ahead and plug this thing in and get water moving through the chiller. That'll actually shorten up the time it takes for your water to actually cool down, which is nice, but also it gives you a chance to check and make sure everything's working and functioning properly before you have this thing fully filled up. So I always recommend doing that, and that's what we're gonna go do. Now I'm gonna set up the standard chiller, and we're gonna turn this thing on and get it all functioning so that you know exactly what to expect when it comes to the standard chiller. And then I will show you the Pro chiller, obviously hooked up to the pod. And if you're interested in the all-in, I'll even show you how that one works too, so that you just have like a resource for all of the options. So like I mentioned, your fittings are gonna be completely different. You obviously see there's a lot of differences here on your connection tubes. I keep calling them fittings, they're just connection tubes. You have a pre-filter on this one as well. Just one extra little caution to keep debris from making its way into your chiller, which is nice. Still fully insulated, have your little shut off here, and that's where we're gonna connect it into the chiller. So let's hook it up. All right, so in the spirit of capturing this water, I'm gonna shut this valve and go ahead and put this on. There's one, and then the second one we're gonna put in here, same thing. We're gonna close this valve, not tighten it all the way, but just enough to where the water's no longer coming out. And that's what I like about outdoor cold plunges is it doesn't matter if the water goes everywhere, it's just a part of it. So now we've got that connected, and we're gonna bring our chiller over. Always goes in the same spot, right here on the foot side of the plunge. I feel like since I have it, I might as well show just how they both connect and how they both look. It's the same thing. We're gonna go down here, move the chiller to where it needs to for this to fit. All right, and now we're gonna open the airways, let the water flow. Make sure these are nice and snug now. Now this is my microphone. This is the chiller on. So as you can hear, it's making some noises. That's the pump. That's not the actual fan though. So that's the standard chiller. I literally have the microphone on it so you can hear the pump. It does make a little whining noise. And then once the fan kicks on, which it should soon. All right, so now you can hear the chiller is completely on. This is the loudest it'll ever get. I actually have a decibel meter. I'm gonna go grab that. For reference, this is the Pro chiller and it's on currently. Turning the temp down so it can turn on. You can hear the fan. I literally have, this is the fan that blows the air, and this is the all-in, same thing, but this one is just so quiet. The Pro chiller is the second quietest. They're like the same thing. And then the standard makes a little more noise, but it's bearable. Now let's go check out these chillers. And they're all pumping right now. So this is the loudest one. Right next to it, not terrible. Now we'll go to the Pro. And now let's go back here to the all-in. It's literally what it is outside. Was that helpful at all? I don't know. I feel like sometimes everybody has like a different hot button. Some people it's all about price. Some people it's about space. Some people it's about efficiency. Some people it's about noise. Like, what's your hot button? What is the most important thing to you when it comes to purchasing a cold plunge or even building your own cold plunge? I'm actually genuinely curious. If you don't mind, if you're able to, pop it down in the comments below and just let me know, because that really is helpful in my future reviews and even updated reviews on products that a lot of people are interested in. Now, I wish I had one of the original Plunge chillers running right now, because even though this is making some noise and it's a little louder obviously than the Pro and the all-in chiller, it's so much quieter than the original 1 horsepower chiller that Plunge was using on their original design when it's pumping. Matter of fact, I used to have mine in my garage, and my wife would work out in the garage, and anytime it would kick on, she'd be like, I can't handle this. She would literally go unplug it because it was just loud. But that's kind of the cool thing about this. Like, every year I would expect the technology in cold plunges to just continuously get more efficient and get colder and just get better. So it's real exciting to see that Plunge has so many different products to offer, and this being their bread and butter right here. So I had a call with them the other day, and I said, hey, like, what do you think is the most popular, or not what do you think, but what is the most popular combination that you guys are selling right now? And this is it. Most people are purchasing, or at least inquiring on, the Plunge Iconic Tub with the standard chiller. So it just made sense to go ahead and set this thing up so you could learn a little bit more about it and see what it looks like and hear my take on it. So now the water is almost full. It's kind of at that point where I'm gonna get in here in a second and just kind of make sure that the height is exactly where I want it so that the water is not gonna overflow every time I get into it. And then I'll show you how I fit inside this thing, and then we'll recap this entire review. All right, this is the perfect time to jump in. Now, once again, it's not really gonna be cold. The chiller's been on, so it's getting cool. But this is about when you're gonna wanna get in this thing and make sure it's not gonna overflow. Oh man, it's a very comfortable experience. Now, some people are gonna argue the fact that they might wanna be vertical in the middle of their cold plunge, be in that active pose. I don't disagree. I think that there's a place for both. I think both are great. I think the benefits from cold plunging are gonna be the same, whether you're laying down, up, down, sideways, whatever. As long as you're in cold water, you're stimulating all of the benefits that you're looking for when you're doing cold water therapy. Real quick, I just want to talk about a few things. As you can see, I got in and the water came up a couple inches. So you're not gonna want the water to come up to the brim, but you can see I'm 6'1", 210 pounds, and I can get every part of me. The goal is to always get your collarbone under the water and try to get every part of your body under the water. Let's talk about the stages of cold plunging. So most beginners, when they get in, are gonna get in with their legs crossed and their chest and arms out of the water. This is a very common start for so many people. One of the things that's kind of nice about this tub is it is large enough. I mean, once again, I'm a larger person. You can sit like this. Me and my wife sometimes will sit in like this, and it's very comfortable. It's big enough for us to both get in here just like we'd be in a bathtub together. Not to get too much information here, but we can also sit like this, her on one side, me on one side, and have a great conversation, have a couple-minute cold plunge together, challenge each other to stay a little bit longer, and it's great. So there's a lot of room in here to lay a lot of different ways. You can lay with your back on this wall. You can sit in the middle if you want to, like this. You can sit with your back on this wall. And the cool thing about having a cold plunge is, like, I have kids that are competitive cheerleaders and they're constantly getting injured, and they don't always want to get their entire body in a cold plunge when they're trying to do the injury prevention benefit. So let's say they hurt their wrist or arm, they can just set their wrist and arm in from the outside, get the benefit of an ice pack on their arm, feels really good, and then obviously they don't have to get their entire body wet, which is cool. So that is one thing a lot of people don't really realize. When they have a cold plunge, they can do that. Stage 2 obviously is going to be laying back with arms out, but having your chest underwater. Stage 3 would be having your arms underwater, collarbone above the water. Stage 4 would be having your neck fully submerged under the water. And then stage 5 is fully dunking, and this is an easy cold plunge to do so in. Easy cold plunge to dunk. That's stage 5. Stage 6, next level, completely crazy, but a lot of people do it. Get a snorkel or a straw and go underwater and literally breathe through the straw or the snorkel. That's not my thing. I don't do it, but a lot of people do. There we have it, guys. There's the Plunge. That's the iconic Plunge tub. This is one of the top selling cold plunges on the market, and for good reason. It's a great insulated, beautiful cold plunge that ranges from a lot of different people, from beginner cold plungers all the way to celebrities and athletes. You see these cold plunges at a lot of people's homes. You see these cold plunges. They have a commercial version of this as well. You see it at a lot of gyms, which is nice too. But it's a great cold plunge, and it should last a very long time. Their chillers are great, and one of the things I love about Plunge is if you do connect to their app, if you have an issue with your chiller, they'll actually know more than often. They'll actually know before you'll know. So it's cool to be proactive, and obviously keeping your cold plunge up and running is the goal, is the key. And I definitely appreciate the team at Plunge for doing a great job there. So I would say if you're in the market for a cold plunge and this is one you're considering, I would say this is a cold plunge worth considering. Obviously make your own decision. Everything is obviously up to you. So if it is within your budget and it is a cold plunge that you like, I've really enjoyed working with Plunge. They make a great product and they're constantly innovating, which is nice. So if you do decide you want to get one, make sure you use and check out that link in the description below. Use discount code MAUS, that's M-A-U-S. It'll save you some money, which is awesome. And other than that, I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. I'll see you on the next video, my friends. Have a great day and God bless. Hey, and before you go, I really think you should check out this video next. Now, this is when I went to the Plunge factory and I actually did a behind the scenes review, I didn't even know I was doing this, of the Plunge, which we just went over, and the Plunge All-In. So you can get a full review on the Plunge All-In and the Plunge together so you can really see the comparison between both. Check that video out, it'll be right here.